Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Esta va a ser una breve sesión de español, en la cual yo nada más voy a hablar de algunos de los métodos que yo diseñé cuando estaba aprendiendo el español. Okay, so basically this is just going to be a brief information session. I'm just going to share some of the methods I developed when I was learning Spanish. One of the best things that you can do for yourself to make yourself sound natural, to see how the language is actually spoken and used, to see how sentences are formed. One of the great things you can do, which I did a lot, is you can take these DVDs, which are a lot of times dubbed in Spanish or in French as well. A lot of times they'll have the subtitles in English and Spanish and French and all that. Um, Instead of trying to sit there and watch a TV show or a newscast or something in a foreign language, when you're a beginner, it's really good to hear repetition. Okay, not necessarily some foreigner speaking fluently very quickly in their own language. You're not really going to pick up on that if you don't already have the background. So what I propose you do, and what worked very well for me, is you take a DVD, let's just say a Disney DVD, for example. Children's movies are actually very good. What this does, if you think about it, when you learn your native language, you learn it as a child, and you don't learn grammatical rules and take tests on it the way you do when you're older and you get to school. You learn them through vigorous repetition and exposure. Okay, so what I propose you do is this. Let's say you're trying to learn Spanish. What I would do is I would take a DVD, for example, let's just say The Lion King, Aladdin, something like that. Watch one scene in English, okay? Then watch that same scene again in English with Spanish subtitles, okay? Then watch that same scene again, okay, in Spanish with English subtitles, okay? Now that way you're seeing it, you're hearing it, and it's repetition. It's the same scene. So when you listen to it in English, you understand it. Then you're watching it again, and you're seeing the Spanish subtitles. You're getting a feel for it. Then you're watching it in Spanish, and you still have the English subtitles there to help you out. Okay, then what I would do after that is I would watch it in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. That way you're hearing the Spanish and reading the Spanish, and that's great as well. Then finally, the fifth time you watch the scene, okay, watch that scene in Spanish only, okay, and see how much of it you get. I guarantee you're going to have get a lot more benefit out of this way than just sitting there listening to a native speaker, okay? Because when I was first learning Spanish, if I turned on a program, okay, in Spanish, and I just turned it on and like, you know, ah, te- bueno, estoy llamando por teléfono y en ese momento no sé qué decir, speaking loud, quickly, and no repetition whatsoever. When you're a kid, your parents talk to you slowly and they use lots of repetition. Dada, dada, mama, mama, and eventually you're like, oh, dada, mama. That's just how that process works, and that's the natural process. That's the process that gets you really speaking. So that is one method that I highly, highly recommend. I call it the 5-scene DVD method. Again, that's once in your native language with no subtitles, once in your native language with the other language, with the second language subtitled, once in the second language with English subtitles, once in the second language with the second language subtitles, and then finally for the fifth time just in the second language. Again, that's going to give you a ton of repetition. You already know what it means more or less from hearing it in English twice and seeing the Spanish words. That way you're learning the Spanish vocabulary, you're hearing how it's spoken, and you're learning natural speaking through repetition. So again, that is a method I highly, highly, highly recommend. I used it a lot. It got me far. Another thing you can do for self-study is basically a language is comprised of, you know, vocabulary, which are just words, right? It's a bunch of different words. Grammatical rules, okay, which are the rules for how those words go together to form coherent sentences, to form meaning, okay, to communicate, okay, and really, in my opinion, I put verbs in a separate category, which are the action words, verbs. I put those in a separate category because if you only speak one language, you might not really understand the term conjugation, but even in your own language, whether you realize it or not, and definitely in the language you want to learn, you're going to have to conjugate those verbs with action words based on time and place. Okay, so here are some examples of books. This book right here, Spanish Grammar, it'll cost you $6, okay? And it's going to go through all 8 parts of speech. It's going to go through things like alphabet, all 8 parts of speech, things like, your nouns, your verbs, your prepositions, your adverbs, your adjectives, whatnot, everything. And it's going to explain the rules. It's going to give you examples, and you'd be surprised how comprehensive this little book is. Also, in the same series, this book, I'm sure some of you have heard of the 501 Verbs series. 501 Spanish verbs is great. This is actually 301 Spanish verbs. It's the pocket version. What that does is it gives you your verbs, and it gives you tables of all the different conjugations. Okay? So, for example, if I want to speak in the present about something that's happening right now, I'm talking about something I'm doing right now or something that's a fact or true or whatever in the present tense, okay, I would actually change the spelling and pronunciation of the verb based on the present tense and the past tense and the future tense and so on and so forth. So really, you want to get a verb chart. I don't care if it's 555, I don't care if it's 501, I don't care if it's 301. Get yourself a verb chart. Verbs are very important. It's the only action you get studying languages. Okay, get a grammar guide, because grammar is very important, how the sentences are formed. But again, this is busy work. This is what you did in school. When you were learning a language, let's say you're a native English speaker, when you were learning English, okay, you were learning it the way I was describing with those DVDs, right? Through vigorous repetition and exposure. Okay, that's the natural way, that's the best way. You probably were 4, 5, 6 years old before you got into this stuff in your own language. But anyway, this and these 2 books here, and they come in any language, like here, Japanese, okay? So, again, for your studying, for your busy work, for your structure, a good verb conjugation chart book, a good grammar book, and probably a vocabulary book. Now, the difference between a dictionary and a vocabulary book is that a dictionary has words in alphabetical order and has their meaning, right? Okay, a vocabulary book, what it does is it divides, okay, vocabulary into sections. So, for example, hospital, medical, and health would be one chapter, and you have all of your hospital vocabulary, and then another chapter would be around the house. Okay, you'd have in the house, right? You'd have house, casa, bed, cama, table, mesa, things like that. Okay, so for the structure side, a grammar book, a vocabulary book, and a verb chart book. And for the natural, easy speaking way, the next best thing to going to another country or finding a friend that speaks that language and practicing with them is probably that DVD method I described. So, love some feedback if any of you try any of these methods, or what you think about the video, or if you have any questions. And hope it's helpful. Bye.